I wanted to ask you about the thing that happened, I don't know, a month ago. So basically, that huge operation, we call it Pautina in Russian, the, what do you call it, Spiderweb. And it's going to tie into what we will talk about later. But so the crazy thing is that, according to the Russian nuclear doctrine, anyone that's responsible, everyone that's backing some sort of an operation like this is obviously responsible. So I just wanted to ask you, because it kind of went over people's heads, we stopped talking about it. How close were we to a nuclear war, first of all? How much right did Russia have to respond to those that are responsible? And as you said, your World War meter, like how close were we to a total collapse? If you could kind of sum it up for us.
Yeah, Operation Spiderweb, of course, was the Ukrainian operation that was partially successful. It was drone attacks that targeted the Russian bomber fleet, nuclear bomber fleet, consisting of Tu-95 Bears and also not blackjacks, but backfires. Hit some backfires too, and which are intermediate range bombers that can be made, intercontinental with, Russian refueling tankers. But it was essentially appears to have been masterminded in with the British. The British came up with a very similar plan that Ukraine copied, and was all about drone-based attacks on an enemy, nuclear arsenal. Um, Obviously, Russia. I mean, Russia is the only enemy that the Europeans are concerned with right now. They view Russia as a big threat. Of course, it's a threat of NATO's own making, because Putin tried to join NATO twice in 2000, 2002. He then came up with a mutual security agreement in 2009, which was reiterated in 2021. But you're right. This definitely did cross the Russian nuclear threshold, because, well, the Ukraine is claiming it disabled or destroyed 34% of Russia's nuclear bomber fleet. The reports I've seen from Russia, they're claiming it was 4 to 5%. So probably it's closer to maybe the 10% range. And the Russians, certainly during the Ukraine war, they typically are much more truthful in their reporting than the Ukraine and Western side, which is we basically just parrot and reiterate whatever Zelensky says, and he literally everything he says is a lie. I don't recall him telling the truth anytime, other than the fact that Russia invaded and that was illegal under international law. Everything else that he's ever stated has been completely false. And unfortunately, President Trump and the Trump administration have essentially sided with Zelensky after a sincere attempt to try to moderate an end to the war. They've decided to pursue the Biden's war in Ukraine, and fight it to the last Ukrainian. The only difference is, for the next 10 years, we're going to be selling Ukraine arms instead of handing them over for free. But in terms of the World War III threat, if it was any leader of the Russian leader other than President Vladimir Putin, I would have said that it was a Cuban Missile Crisis. We should have gone to DEFCON 3 or above, to kind of assure that Russia that we were ready to respond if they tried to engage in a nuclear strike against the U.S. or NATO. Certainly, one of the most likely possibilities was that Putin could simply use one or more nukes against Ukraine. That would not trigger Article 5. The U.S. would certainly stay out of that. We probably would not even respond militarily, let alone with a nuclear response. So really, that's they could, as I wrote in an article in 2022. Back in, I think, April. Yeah, it was in April of 2022, just a couple months after they invaded. I said, using a nuclear weapon over Kyiv that didn't kill anyone, but could be seen by everyone, and wounded some people, thousands of people, would be Putin's essentially trump card to win the war swiftly. The other way, of course, would be massing a massive amount of Russian troops in Belarus, which could then be used to retake Kyiv.
Yeah. So as soon as this thing happened, right? Like I was born and raised in Western Ukraine, but I have friends and family in Russia. I'm a constant contact with both sides, Ukraine and Russia. So I reached out to some people in Ukraine, the super pro nationalists, the people that are on the border of neo Nazis. They're happy. They're jumping around. They're like, yay, we really hit Russia. I contact some people in Russia, and a lot of people in Russia are mad. They don't understand why their government is not responding more strict, let's say. So I don't want to stay on this subject for too long because I want to get back to your article that you written about the last developments. But my question is, Russia kept saying, red line, like Ukraine was a red line, then Kursk was a red line. Now, like, how many red lines, and why do I mean, you said that it's because it's Putin, but do you think that, like, it's tough? Like, do you think that like, what would you do in this situation, really, if you were in the place of a president? Because to me, it seems like now the whole world is looking like, well, Russia won't do anything anyway. So do you think that they should have? Because besides nuclear weapons, last time we spoke, we seen what Oreshnik can do, so they have other means of basically, I don't know, calming down Zelensky and his regime. So I guess, my question is, does Russia have the right to respond drastically? And what I'm heading to is because a lot of people are now saying that there was some kind of a agreement between Zelensky and Putin, like they're basically his people, and Zelensky's daddy, they're on the phone, they're talking, and they're doing this for show. Like, so what do you think, and how much right does Russia have to respond, more drastically? And how much more do we push that red line?
Well, I think Russia does need to take decisive action to restore deterrence. Obviously, deterrence has not worked against continuing, U.S. and NATO-backed deep strike attacks against Russian territory, pre-war Russian territory, up to and including Moscow itself. If I were a Russian general or a Russian national security advisor, I would advise Putin to do what he did at the beginning of the war, which was to focus on surrounding or partially surrounding Kyiv to force Zelensky to accept Russia's peace terms, which are overall reasonable. I would say that taking additional Ukrainian territory that Russia doesn't control is not necessarily reasonable. But other than that, I think their terms are mostly reasonable, and something that Ukraine could live with. I published a multitude of articles over the last, especially the last year, since June of last year, detailing why I think Russia's terms can be tweaked to be acceptable to Ukraine, more in Ukraine's favor. Unfortunately, I did get that peace plan, one of my peace plans. That I published, I think, in just late last year. I got into the hands of a member of Trump's national security cabinet, but unfortunately, I don't think it went hadn't any traction. Never, I don't think the president or the vice president ever saw it. For a while, I thought that Trump was pursuing some of the recommendations that I had, probably just by coincidence, before things kind of got bogged down, and his 22-point peace plan that he presented to the Russians in late April or early May was kind of a take it or leave it. And he decided to give up on the idea of negotiated peace deal with Russia and Ukraine. But I think the best way, the path to victory has always led through Kyiv. Putin clearly understood that at the beginning of the war, but then he foolishly decided to withdraw Russian forces from northern Ukraine between March 26th and April 4th, in advance of the scheduled signing of the Istanbul Agreement on April 9th of 2022. And if he had simply kept those Russian forces in place, there was nothing Ukraine could do to dislodge them. Then the war would, Zelensky would have been forced to sign that agreement, and all Russian forces would have been withdrawn from pre-war Ukraine in exchange for Ukrainian neutrality and partial demilitarization.